and asked me to announce who she is. And I think this is Julie York here, right here. And she is a secret agent, family and community health secret agent for Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. And I'm not sure what her program is, but she's brought some heathens. That's what 4-H stands for, isn't it?
There's an H in it.
Yeah. She's brought some heathens with her today to assist her with the program. I tried to get her to lead the singing and she declined. So I'll work on that between now and next time. Julie?
Next year when I come back.
Hi. Thank you for having me. Russ gets his notification that it's his turn, and he's like, Julie! So I did this again last year. I wanted to just open and say, yes, I'm with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension as the Family and Community Health Agent. And if anybody is interested in knowing more about what I do, I have 4 annual reports here. So if you want some light reading, it'll give you some information on what I do. The announcement I was going to make is we are having the Upshur County Health Fair again on Saturday, February 29th here in that room. So if your organization or you know an organization wants to be involved, then please let me know. Emma Birch is in charge of the vendors. We are starting Walk Across Texas that day. Like that's going to be a kickoff, and we're going to be walking around the parade grounds as a kickoff event. Excuse me. I have pneumonia right now, but we're good. I was going to say last year's Walk Across Texas program between Ore City ISD, Union Grove ISD, students, and then our adult participants walked over 2 million miles last year in 2019. So it's just a great way to get moving. Okay, so one of the things that I did in 2019 was organize a group of 10 4-H members and then 2 adult, 1 agent like myself in Oklahoma and her husband, and then another parent, and then my husband, Steve York, went with us, and I took 4-Hers back to the National 4-H Center in Chevy Chase, Maryland. It's just outside Washington, D.C., and I went in 1981 as a high schooler, and so that was an amazing program, and I wanted to reach out to my kids, and I asked them, I said, a couple of kids, do you want to go? And they're like, yeah. So it's because of the community of Upshur County that they were able to raise the money. It was about $10,000 total for all of us to go. Actually more than that, about $1,500 a person. So $15,000, I can do math. So I'll just to let you know, we do have a board up here, and my girls will be glad to stay and talk to you and have any questions about things afterwards. But we do have a little presentation. We've done this for a few groups, so I'm going to invite Brenna East. She's a Upshur County 4-H Council President and homeschool student and graduating this year. And Ryann Murphy goes to Harmony, and she's a junior or sophomore. Sophomore. I don't know. They're just so mature. They're my friends. So we have decided, and then Steve's going to come up and talk in a minute. We're not going to be very long, which is killing them to keep it short. But I wanted to just say that, we are always working on youth development as a 4-H program, and that's one of the things I do is manage the 4-H program. And we're always working on developing leaders, and that's just something that everybody is focused on. But there's another aspect to developing youth that relates to developing citizens, active citizens. And so that's why this program was called Citizenship Washington Focus. We go to Washington and we focus on citizenship. So just the 3 top things that we noticed when we got there. The water tastes different in Washington, D.C. We all notice every person, one girl is from Wichita Falls, one girl is from Crockett, one girl is from Sulphur Springs, and then the people in Oklahoma. Everybody agreed, water tastes different out there. And then the smell is different there. We were hit with that when we got off the plane at Love Field too. We're like, whoa. Didn't notice it until because the kids were all saying it smells different. And I'm like, we noticed when we got home. Then, girls, what's the third thing we noticed within an hour of being in the area?
There's no trucks. No pickup trucks.
No pickup trucks. I don't remember who pointed it out, but it was like their eyes were opened to there's a world without pickup trucks. So what I'm going to do, since we started with that, I'm going to let Ryan talk a little bit about first the kids went on, and like I said, I was taken, most of these kids had not been on a plane, well, I'm just going to let her tell you.
So like Miss Julie said, I'm going to talk to y'all today about the things that a lot of us did for the first time. So I think out of the 10 kids, there were only 2 of us that have ever flown before, and I know all of us, that was our farthest we have ever been away from home, except one girl. She did go to China one time. But me and Brenna definitely have never been to the East Coast or away from the South at all until this trip. We use many different ways of transportation to get around the city and to DC and back home and stuff. So to get, obviously we took a plane to DC, and then when we got to DC, we used a shuttle bus. I've never been on one of those, Brenna. No, not until then. We used a shuttle bus to get from the airport to the National 4-H Center. And then while we were there touring the city and stuff, we took a actual tour bus. Very neat.
What's it called? A tour bus, a regular,
Charter.
charter bus. They'd never been on a charter bus.
Never been on a charter bus. During 4th of July, we actually ended up having to use the subway and some city buses. So we carried around like the subway passes and the city bus cards and stuff like that. On the 4th of July, we ended up stranded in the middle of DC. So we walked to the train station. We watched the fireworks from the Iwo Jima Memorial. And so we walked to the train station. The train station was closed. No more buses, no more trains. So we resorted to a cab, one taxi, and 2 Ubers. Never done that.
We had to download the app on one of the 18-year-olds' phones so they could call.
His phone was the only one that was alive. So we had to call 2 Ubers. It was definitely an interesting experience. So thanks to all of these.
We could have walked home. It would have been a 40-minute walk. It was okay. We were
not the only group that was stranded. Another group from Texas also had to walk the 40-minute journey.
They walked. Yeah.
But thanks to all these many ways of transportation, we got to see how diverse the city of Washington, D.C. was. We got to see a lot of different people from different countries, touring the city during America's birthday. It ended up being so diverse that we ate at an Irish pub for lunch on the 4th of July. In Chinatown. The Irish pub was in Chinatown. And to make it even more interesting, I ordered quesadillas. So, I was eating quesadillas in an Irish pub in Chinatown, in Washington, D.C., on America's birthday.
I saw a truck after we left.
There were a few, there just weren't many.
So our original plan wasn't to eat at the Irish pub. We brought a box lunch that the National 4-H Center provided for us, but we decided we wanted to have the experience of an Irish pub and stuff. So we gave our box lunches to homeless people in the area around Chinatown and around the square and on the National Mall and stuff. So it was a really eye-opening experience to be able to do that for somebody. Thank y'all.
The other thing, one of the young men that we took from Gilmer, Dawson Jones, is an adopted child from the country of Georgia. And so he was wanting to eat at Georgian food, and we found a restaurant that was part of the walking that day, but they were closed for the 4th of July. It just didn't say it on the website. So, but Steve went back and got him the next day, got him some Georgian food from that restaurant and brought it back so he could have some authentic food from the country of Georgia. So that was kind of another eye-opener, just to see someone who was very passionate about his personal history and the fact that, we're all just not from here.
Brenna's going to talk about moments.
During our 6-day stay in Washington, D.C., we saw so many amazing different monuments and memorials. We were able to see the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, where the reflection pool is. And we saw a bunch of the different war memorials, like the World War II Memorial, the Korean War Veterans Memorial, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And we also were able to see things like the Air Force Memorial and the Jefferson and the Pentagon 9/11 Memorial. We were able to see that, and we were able to see the Pentagon too, which that was pretty cool. But and the Pentagon 9/11 Memorial was really amazing to go see and experience, because so many people have all these different stories about where they were or what they were doing during that time, and we were able to hear some of those stories. And most of us weren't born yet. Some of us were maybe like little babies, but it was really cool to be able to walk around and see that and to experience that. We saw the Arlington National Cemetery, and we were able to hear the story of the couple that were from Oklahoma, because their son had passed away in 2004, and he's buried there in the Arlington National Cemetery, and they hadn't been able to see him nearly since they had buried him, and they were able to go up there and see his grave, and they told us his story. And that was really cool when they told us about how he was in 4-H and he was in FFA, and all the lives he had touched of his friends and fellow members of those organizations, because they had sent some stones with them for them to place on top of the headstone up there. So, and they told us his story, and it was really touching and emotional. We were all practically crying by the end of it. We were. What are some of the other memorials we saw?
George Washington's house.
We went to
Mount
Mount Vernon. We were able to go there and walk his property, and that was amazing to see, because they tried to keep everything true to the historical times. And that was amazing. We saw his tombstone, him and his wife, and they have like a, 50-acre property or something right there. And they have the trails, and we walked like all the trails. We walked all the way down to the end of it and all the way back, and it was a long walk and a lot of hills, and that was really cool to see. And it was really historical, and
It made you feel like it came alive.
it made you feel like you were there during that time. It was amazing. Workshops.
National.
The workshops. Yes.
Workshops.
Yes.
We were there for a reason, for them to
Yes.
learn about being citizens. So
Not
I brought
just
a
to
couple of
see.
workshops. Let me move you guys together. Workshops that you all attended. I know my one's not working.
I got this. So me and Brenna were actually able to stay in the same group while we were divided up amongst the kids in the other states, and so we went to the workshops together. And one of my favorite workshops was probably the etiquette workshop, where they taught you like first impressions and about handshakes and like how you should wear your name tag on your clothes and all kinds of different things like that. And I just thought that was something really interesting, and I have really been able to realize how much I've actually used that stuff coming back and talking with other people. So,
one of the really cool workshops that I remember were the civil debate workshops, and it was really important, because they were teaching you about how, even though everybody has different opinions about everything, you don't have to agree with everybody's opinion, but you do have to respect their opinion. And they were teaching us how to carry on a civil conversation as to not arguing about opinions and things like that, because everybody has their own opinions and not everybody agrees with everybody's opinions, and there's tons of arguments that go on over opinions. And they were teaching us how you don't have to agree with everybody's opinion, but you do have to respect them. And we went over several different things that are big political
Very
opinions.
sensitive topics.
And how to be able to sit there and carry on the conversation without arguing or yelling with each other. And of course, I mean, we're younger, so we don't have as high opinions as some older adults. But it was really interesting to see and to go over, to be able to talk about that. Because, I mean, those are some things that, like, you may hear your parents or grandparents or other family members talk about that you may not pay attention to as much. But thinking about it later on, we'll be those adults making those decisions, voting on those things, and it's good to be able to carry on those conversations civilly.
One of the pictures that's been flying around is we went to, on a state night out, we went to see the theater in the round of Grease. And everybody knows Grease, right? Except for the kids I took. So they were like, my parents have seen this? Mm-hmm. Yes, they have, and they knew you were going. But it was a theater, it was a dinner theater in the round, so when we walked in, the buffets were out on the floor in the middle, and then our waiters were actually the characters that were playing in the play, and so, or the actors. And so that was really fun, because at first I didn't get it, and then when there was like
Like a musical.
an interlude or whatever, they'd come back out to refill your drinks or whatever, and they're like,
They're in the costumes.
You're them. So that was really fun because, but it was in the round, and so they were coming up into the audience and going around, and it was a lot of fun. And watching them laugh at something simple like Grease that we just take for granted, but then we're like, what have I exposed you to? It was a lot of fun. Steve, I was going to have you come up, as he's coming up to talk about just the Holocaust Museum. Have everybody been to the Holocaust Museum? Nope. Okay, he's going to tell you. But I will tell you real quickly, the 4th of July was such a treat. We ended it, we started it doing some things and then heading to the Holocaust Museum. Then we ended up at the Iwo Jima Memorial, as she said. And we chose not to go on to the National Mall, which was a tough decision, but there's hundreds of thousands of people there. And we're a small group, as you can see, and I did not want to lose, I mean, we're big enough, but small enough. I didn't want to lose anybody or have any issues because, there's times of the world you're kind of like, we'll just stay over here and watch. So what we are glad we did that because we were up just enough across the river from the National Mall, and you can see some of the pictures that have gone through with the fireworks. The people that were on the ground, nobody realized there wasn't like any wind, and they shot off, how many, was it $1 million worth of fireworks? And there was no wind, so all the smoke from the fireworks just kind of sat there. And we're like getting frustrated, like, oh, we were in the wrong place. But we found out from the people that were down there, they couldn't see anything because it was all smoky. So we at least could see some from our vantage point up higher. So
It was really good.
it was amazing, but like the best 5 minutes.
It ruins every other fireworks show for us.
Ever, yeah. But there is one picture here, and I think it's in there, but it's right here where we get there up to the memorial area where people are setting up to watch the fireworks, and there's like a tower set up, and there's snipers up there. So, or were they not armed? They were armed. Okay. So I'm saying sniper. They're like, whatever. But it was kind of like, hi, this is kind of awkward, but I'm feeling pretty safe. I'm good. And so then once everybody kind of see, that's where we were sitting. I took that with my phone directly in front of me. And you see how the smoke's just kind of starting. That's the beginning, yeah. But we sat down, and pretty soon someone else came and sat near us, obviously, and they were 4-H members from somewhere else in the country. They weren't even with our organization. So it was just kind of weird how, things mesh. And then, we found other 4-Hers that were there that had also gone to the Iwo Jima Memorial to watch the fireworks, and so they got to socialize and have some fun that night. But then it was the long walk home that we missed the train coming home, or the bus.
So Steve, you're talking about the Holocaust.
We went to the Holocaust Museum, and the way it is set up is kind of in a round, and you start off at the top, and you work your way back down to the bottom, and it's set up chronologically. So it goes through different parts of the history of how things began. They'd have a few places where you could sit down, and they'd have a video over like news type clips to kind of show you what the atmosphere was like. I think probably one of the things that stuck out the most to me is they had a room that you kind of walk through, and it had shoes of people who had been killed at one of the crematories, and it was just packed full of shoes and stuff that were those people's shoes. A lot of the things we did were a lot of fun. There were a lot of things that were very sobering. That was one of them. I think people were fairly quiet coming out of there just because it's just so intense. I would say that it's something that you need to have enough time if you're going to go through that to really be able to draw it all in. We had so many different things that we went to see, and so you didn't get to spend as much time at each one of them that you'd really like to. You could stay there for 2 weeks and still not see everything that's possible to see in Washington, D.C. I will say this, the kids, one of the things that stuck out the most on the trip to the kids that I remember was the fact that they saw Secret Service walking around the World War II memorial with one of Obama's daughters. And so they were freaking out about that. And
It was exciting. We were trying to figure out who she was, because why were these Secret Service
With her.
really close to somebody, like within this?
And they were just surrounding her.
Yeah,
They were like
she
the
was
whole,
here, and they were all around her.
like a
Yeah.
mile radius.
they wouldn't let you
around her.
get close to where she
So
was
they were
standing
trying to
at.
take pictures.
Yeah, so that was quite interesting. But I think they all had a good time. I think it was very informative. They were pros on flying back, so they weren't near as bad coming back as they were going out. I think also for some of the parents saying goodbye at the airport leaving, that was the first time for some of the parents, I believe also, that were having a hard time. So you look back at them, and they were still waving, and you were getting ready to go. But they enjoyed it, and it was a good time, and they got to talk to kids from other states at their age, and they got to talk about a bunch of different events. And so I think it was well worth their trip to go out there.
In Oklahoma, where I'm from, they take 2 busloads of kids every year, and it's an award for turning in record books. Is it on?
It's a green light, yeah.
It went away.
Does that make, okay. Where I came from, Oklahoma takes 2 busloads, and they go every summer. It's a record book reward honor. Here in Texas, it's just up to whoever wants to take a group. So there was another group from Texas from the College Station Bryan area, and their 4-H club just travels, and they just get with other people around the country and trade off and do that kind of activity with them, and they're learning their project. From our trip and from hearing our trip, it looks like the state's going to start doing some more across the state with 4-Hers and taking them to this awesome experience. So do y'all have any questions? I think we've covered pretty much everything. Usually we have 3 more people or whatever. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What was the building with all the construction going on?
The construction was probably the Lincoln Memorial because of the 4th of July activities.
President Obama spoke.
Or
Right
Trump.
there, or Trump,
Mhm.
spoke right there on the 4th of July, so they had the stage and everything set up for that. But a lot of the monuments were under
I think he's talking about
construction.
Which one are you talking about?
Washington.
Oh, the one that had the scaffolding, that's George Washington's home.
Oh, they were redoing the roof on top of this.
George Washington's. But yeah,
And I want to say the Jefferson one is sinking.
It is.
They were doing some work on
So if y'all want to have any donations, fundraisers, go fundraise it for Jefferson's.
2
Memorial.
centimeters a year into the river.
Yes, 2 centimeters a year into the river, so, get on it. But, I do recommend Washington DC is a great
We
trip.
got to go to Ted Cruz's office. And,
Oh, yes.
And they showed us around the capitals and all that kind of stuff. We got to see the Supreme Court and got to do all that kind of stuff.
Ted Cruz's office was wonderful. Their staffers, we did not get to see him, he was here.
He was in Texas.
He was in
We were
Texas
back to
for
DC.
4th of July week, but his staffers were wonderful. So any other questions? Yes, sir.
My question relates to what you might have seen in that Holocaust Museum, and I'm just thinking about the civilized world reacting to genocide that goes on somewhere else. And historically, I've read and heard things that governments just didn't want to let the people in other countries even hear about it when they heard, little bits about all this genocide going on over there and those Nazis, and the world didn't really know about it. It's like the world was not trying to listen, or the world was trying to close up its ears. Did you see anything in there that kind of pointed out some of that?
I think there was like a newer section towards the end of the museum that like kind of talks about, people say like it didn't happen or stuff like that. I think they were like touching base on that. I don't know if that.
I think today it couldn't happen because of media and the world we are living in with the technology and the instant news. I don't think anything like that could ever happen again. I mean, maybe it is somewhere, and I'm just ignorant. I don't know. But I don't think it could ever be to that extent because of, like you said, people used to turn more blind eyes because it was far away. Now the world is smaller because of all the technology. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. It does make sense from a communication standpoint, but still yet, based on what human nature is and all that, there's always a reluctance for some kind of political reason for one political country not to impose on another political country.
Well, and I think that's part of why I took, the 4-H Center does the citizenship trainings, is so that they're training young people to be better citizens and learn how to have relationships with people and develop stronger communities so that those relationships are formed. And hopefully they can learn from the past and not make those mistakes again.
One of the things they found out, I'd known because I'd been to Washington before. We were invited when I was up Oklahoma State. We got invited to the White House. But the Washington Monument had started and they stopped construction. So when they started again, the stone was a little bit different color. So as you look up through it, there's different shades of the stone. It's not all the same ones. You can see where the construction had stopped and they started again.
They stopped during the Civil War, and they continued it because Lincoln thought it would not join the country back together again.
Okay, is that it? Thank you so much for listening to us and having us, and maybe we'll see you again next year.